side getting that. One last chance to tip the scales in their favor with their closing argument before turning the case and Charlie Adelson's fate over to the jury. While we'll wait for closing arguments, let's take a look back at what we have seen so far throughout this trial.
In looking at who might have a motive to kill Dan Markel, law enforcement learned that Markel was entangled in a very nasty divorce with his ex-wife, who is the defendant's sister, and her name is Wendy Adelson.
You will learn that Katie heard the hitman joke. You will learn that she heard the $1 million offer, and she got some ideas in her head.
Quote, it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman and it was cheaper to get you this TV. Is that what he said?
That was a joke that he made, yes.
And hiring the hitman, that was to kill Dan Markel, right? That was the joke.
That was the joke that he made in poor taste, yes.
Not to kill someone else.
No. Well, he never used his name.
Okay. Well, he's hiring you the TV because it's cheaper as a divorce present than a hitman. Who else would he be hitting with the hitman?
I never really thought about it because it was not a thing that he meant. He just made a bad joke.
She asked to speak to me confidentially in a very serious tone of voice, told me that Charlie had investigated all possible options to take care of the problem of Danny Markel, including hiring a hitman, which would cost about $15,000. And I later revised that and thought maybe it was $50,000, but the dollar amount was the only thing in question. She definitely said that Charles Adelson had looked into hiring a hitman to kill Danny Markel.
And who was to get the money once the job was done?
Katie.
All right, and did she get the money?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where she got the money from?
The dentist. I called him the dentist at that time.
The dentist?
Like Wendy and her brother.
He's been planting this seed in my head that this needed to get done, this needed to get done. And I guess towards probably around June, July is when he was a little bit more adamant about this job getting done.
Okay, and when you say he, you're talking about who?
Charlie. A couple days after that, I went and I opened the bag and I called Sigfredo and I told him, I was like, there's mold on this money. And he's like, well, blow dry it. And I was like, but why would there be mold on the money? And he's just, I don't know, just blow dry it. So I believe his parents or his mom might have washed the money.
You mean like physically wash the money?
Yes, ma'am.
And why do you think his mom did it?
Because he was always adamant about telling me he didn't have any money in his house. And he told me that his parents had just stopped by right before I got there.
And she's like, my friend killed Dan and he wants you to pay $350,000.
What happened next?
I stood up and I started cursing it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And she's like, no. She sat down next to me. She started telling me, like, I'm so sorry, this is all my fault, but I didn't know any of this was gonna happen. And I'm like, Katie, I'm not gonna be part of this. I'm not gonna be part of paying for a murder. This is insane. And she's like, look, if you don't pay in 48 hours, they will kill you. And I said, Katie, I feel like I'm getting extorted now. The offer was that $1 million was gonna be paid and I was gonna pay $350,000.
The blackmailer, Catherine McBanoa, negotiates some type of layaway plan for you to complete the extortion with the Latin Kings?
Okay, Katie wasn't the blackmailer, and Katie wasn't the one who was extorting me.
Did she put you on a payment plan?
Yes.
All right, as we get ready for the closing arguments, let's bring back in Dave Ehrenberg. He's the state attorney in Palm Beach County, Florida, and also knew Dan Markel, the victim in this case. Set it up for us. This is the last chance for both sides. What are you expecting to hear first from the state?
Georgia Kaplan is going to go through her entire case bit by bit, remind people about how much information, how much evidence there is tying Charlie to this crime, how this could not have been accomplished without Charlie pulling the strings, and then she will dissect his defense. Now, normally, the defense doesn't have to put on any information. They don't, because the state has the entire burden of proof, but the defense put on a case, and now she's going to get a chance to expose how ridiculous it is just by the fact that, yeah, there's a layaway plan for the Latin Kings. That makes no sense, right? He wanted to extort Charlie. Well, he didn't have to go and kill Charlie's enemy to extort Charlie. Tallahassee is 400 miles away from Miami, 7-hour-plus drive. They had to go twice. They risked everything and eventually got caught because of it. Why do that to extort Charlie when you could just put a gun to his head and say, give me money or else you or your family dies? None of this makes any sense.
Yeah, there is movement in the courtroom. The judge is standing at the bench. The defendant, Charlie Adelson, is there. They're going through some preliminary items before bringing the jury in, and then it'll be time for the close. From the defense, Dave, is this a lot about reasonable doubt, you think, in this close, given that they have presented so much and they don't really want to do it again because I don't know if it passes the smell test?
Yeah, they're going to try to reach just one juror, and that would be a hung jury. Look, they did it with the Katie Magbanua case. They were able to get a hung jury in that one the first time around. She took the stand. At least one person believed her lies. And this guy, Charlie, is a better liar than Katie. I'll give him that. He's really smooth. He had a lot of time in jail to think about his performance, and he performed. And so they're going to hope and lean on the fact that he came clean. He had an answer for everything, when, of course, the state's also going to say, look, he had an answer for everything. That doesn't mean he's credible. Quite the opposite.
Luis Rivera said that the dentist and Wendy Adelson were the source of the payment. The big question people have is, will there be more Adelsons in trouble? Is this over after Charlie, or should Donna and Wendy be looking over their shoulder?
Well, Ted, I believe that the case was that it was the dentist and Donna. Donna gave him the money. That's why it was wet. She tried to wash it literally. She took money laundering literally, apparently. I think she's in a lot of jeopardy. I think she would be the next domino to fall if Charlie's convicted. But make no mistake, if Charlie is acquitted in this, they're not going after anyone else. That's why it's crucial for the state to get a conviction here. If it's a hung jury, they will try him again. But I do think that more justice is coming. I think if Charlie is convicted, the next one will probably be Donna, but it could be any of the others in the Adelson family, because the evidence that came out in this trial pointed to a family conspiracy.
Absolutely, because again, as ridiculous as some might think that Charlie's story is, it's even crazier to think that some guy's going to whack the ex of his sister without telling the sister or the mom or somebody. I mean, that's just not a birthday present or a gift. It's not something you do, right? Here's Luis Rivera talking about where the money was coming from at the end of the day.
And who was to get the money once the job was done?
Katie.
All right, and did she get the money?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where she got the money from? Do you know where she got the money from?
Yeah, the people.
Who are the people?
The dentist. I called them the dentist at that time.
The dentist?
Like Wendy and her brother.
Okay, and do you know which one of them actually handed Katie the money?
No, absolutely not.
And you weren't there for that?
No, ma'am.
So there, Rivera says it's Wendy and her brother. Then Donna's the alleged launderer of the money, which is always a great fact that they actually wash the money. What do they need? What does the state need, though? It seems like there's more to Charlie because of the Magbanua conversations and all of the sting operations. Doesn't seem to be as much there for the others. Your thoughts?
Right. Well, Ted, as usual, you're right. He did say it was Charlie and Wendy, and then the evidence came out. It looked like Donna was involved. I think a key piece of evidence is that Charlie freaked out when the bump happened, and the undercover officer asked for $5,000 to pay off his brother. Now, that was something that Charlie could not handle. But yet when Katie went to Charlie and said, hey, my friend is going to kill you next and your family, we need a third of $1 million. He was like, okay, here, let's pay it right away. No questions asked. And then when he couldn't pay it all, he just paid a layaway plan, a payment plan for the Latin King. So this shows how ridiculous it is. These types of things don't happen. This is not how it works in the hitman world, but maybe one juror will sympathize with him. I think this is going to be a jury that dislikes Charlie, this guy who came up from Miami to take his sister's kids out of Tallahassee. This is a Tallahassee jury, and they don't like to be talked down to by a guy who pretty obviously lied on the stand.
Yeah, and that dynamic is always big in cases where the jury pool is from a certain area and people think, oh, everybody in Florida is the same. Florida man, no. They're very different communities, as like in other states as well. What about the idea that this could have been both? This could have been a hit and then some extortion at the back end of the hit where they wanted more. Is that valid?
Yeah. Sure, could have been. It still is murder. It's still conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
It's not a defense.
Even if afterward. Right. It's not a defense. But yeah, I mean, that could have happened. He's still guilty of first-degree murder. You know, Ted, the timing of this trial is interesting, too. We were just talking about Tallahassee versus Miami. The big rivalry in Tallahassee is the FSU, Florida State football. It's a religion up there. And a big rivalry is the University of Miami. I'm a Hurricane fan, being from South Florida myself. And the big game is this Saturday. And this is hype week for the big game, Florida State versus their hated rival, Miami. So bad week for Charlie to get a verdict.
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be a lot of people watching that game, Florida State with a lot to lose. Not so much Miami, but all right, Dave.
Rub it in.
Dave Ehrenberg, thank you as always. Appreciate your insights. And again, we didn't really get into it, but we know that Dan Markel was a loved person, and you knew him, it's a big part of this case, and that'll be on everybody's mind as well up there in Tallahassee. As we get ready for the closing arguments, we'll get a break in here. The judge still on the bench. Jury hasn't come in yet, but it's just a few minutes away. We'll watch them together right after this.